In NBA history, a few heavyweight franchises have been massively successful compared to the rest. This discrepancy is probably larger than other major sports. The Los Angeles Lakers, Boston Celtics, San Antonio Spurs, and Chicago Bulls have won the vast majority of the championships in the league since the 1950s. Roughly 2/3 of all championships, actually. However, for all the great teams, there must be bad teams as well. These teams often consistently experience major draft busts and disappointing staff decisions. So we are going to discuss the 5 worst franchises in NBA history. So stick around to the end as we are going to discuss some of the worst NBA teams ever. Let's start. Other teams on our list lost more games, but none were more spectacular than the Los Angeles Clippers in 1986-87. The Clippers began the 1986-87 season with a 4-17 record, similar to the Pistons. Things didn't get much better for them from there, unfortunately. Marques Johnson, the team's leading scorer, suffered a debilitating neck injury, and the team watched in disbelief as supersized center Benoit Benjamin dunked more donuts than basketballs. Los Angeles' eventual .146 winning percentage is still the lowest in the franchise history, which is saying a lot for a team that was the league's laughingstock for much of its early existence. Just how bad was Dallas in 1992-93 season? Dallas's 92-93 season got off to a rocky start when Jim Jackson, the team's top draft pick, refused to play due to a contract dispute. 6 months later, on March 5th, the former Ohio State star returned to the court, but it was far too late. The Mavericks were already in last place in the Western Conference and were in the midst of a 19-game losing streak. Dallas only won 11 games all season, which is what happens when you have the worst offensive, defensive, and net ratings in the league. A 16-game losing streak would be the low point for most team seasons, but not the Mavs. Dallas went on a 17-game losing streak and a 20-game losing streak to finish the 93-94 season with a dismal 13-69 record. The atmosphere in Dallas was so bad that NBA veterans Fat Lever and Randy White both retired after the season to avoid having to play for the Mavericks again. Which team can be considered the worst team in NBA history? Meet the 2011-2012 Charlotte Bobcats. The Charlotte Bobcats are widely regarded as the worst NBA team ever. Let me tell you why. The 2011-2012 Bobcats were absolutely awful. And fortunately for them, the season was cut short due to the lockout, with only 66 games played. They were completely outmatched due to injuries and a lack of talent, and it should never have come to this. Larry Brown led the Bobcats to their first winning season and playoff appearance in 2009-10. Then, before the start of the 2010-11 season, Tyson Chandler and Gerald Wallace were traded, with the Bobcats receiving marginal players in exchange. During the 2010-11 season, Brown was fired and the Bobcats failed to make the playoffs. Before the start of the 2011-12 season, Steven Jackson was traded for Corey Maggette and a draft pick. They started the season 2-4 but finished the season 5-55. Due to injury, Maggette only played 32 games, and DJ Augustin also missed time. Kemba Walker and Bismack Biyombo, the two players selected, had solid rookie seasons but nothing spectacular. The 1947-48 Steamrollers were perfectly awful. Rolling Stones won just 6 games in 1947-48 with a .125 winning percentage, due to bad players and incompetent management. In addition to a terrible shooting percentage of 27.4, Nat Hickey's team was unable to stop anyone on defense, and finished at the bottom of the league in opponent points per game. After just one more season under new ownership, the Steamrollers were forced to fold. The 2004-2005 Hawks were a complete and utter horror show. There were many roster changes and trades, and they couldn't seem to locate the dub. Antoine Walker, the team's best player, averaged 20.4 points and 9.4 rebounds per game for this team. Before he was traded, Walker had played 52 games, averaging 17.5 points and 7 rebounds per game. Al Harrington helped him out with a shooting percentage of 46.9%. All rookie team honors went to 2 rookies that year, Josh Smith and Josh Childress. Childress was the only player who could play at least 80 games that season. 100.6, 111.1, and 111.1 points allowed per game were the second worst for Atlanta's offense and defense. The Hawks had a poor season, but at least they were able to select Marvin Williams in the NBA draft with the second overall pick the following year. In the 1980s, the Clippers went through a rough patch. For the entire decade, they didn't break the .500 mark until the 91-92 season. The 86-87 season was the worst in the time period. The Clippers' lone shining star was Michael Cage. On a 52% shooting clip, the sophomore put up 15.7 points and 11.5 rebounds per game. While the rest of the roster was solid, it wasn't good enough for the team to win games against the league's toughest competition. In addition, morale was at a low point at this stage. It was a terrible season for the Clippers in terms of both offensive and defensive rating. They also allowed 115.9 points per game, which was second worst in the league as a result of this roster. To begin the season, this team was 0-18, which was the worst start in NBA history. Along with the 15-16 Sixers, this is none other than the 2009-10 Nets. New Jersey had a rough start to the season because they were starting from scratch. They had just 4 players from last year's team: Brook Lopez, Terrence Williams, Devin Harris, and Chris Humphries. With 18.8 points per game on 50% shooting and 8.6 rebounds per game on 50%, Brook Lopez had a breakout season with the Los Angeles Lakers. His sophomore year meant he couldn't carry that entire team on his shoulders. 5 losing streaks of at least 8 games long plagued New Jersey. 5 wins from their final 12 games helped them salvage their record before the end of the regular season. After an 82-game season, they had one of the worst team records in the league, 12-70. With an offensive rating of 100.6, they were the lowest of any team. And with the defensive rating, they were 5th worst, 110.5. They have the worst NBA record of all time with a 12-70 record. Are we talking about the Dallas Mavericks this time? That's exactly correct. It's safe to say that the Dallas Mavericks of the 92-93 season are a good candidate to win the title of the worst NBA team ever. When it comes to offensive rating of 99.5 and defensive rating of 114.7 and opponent points per game, Dallas was the worst team in the league. For the 2013-14 season, they were also ranked negative 14.68 in basketball. A lack of veteran leadership and a lack of experience troubled this team. Only Derek Harper had been on the roster for more than 5 years. In the regular season, the 31-year-old averaged 18.2 points and 5.4 assists per game, despite missing 20 games. Every night, Dallas had a terrifying experience. The Mavericks were successful in their strategy of tanking in the NBA in order to obtain high draft picks. As if it were a pickup game, they let their young players lose on the court. After a terrible season, they were able to select Jason Kidd and Jamal Mashburn in the NBA drafts that followed. The Sixers again? Yes, that's right. Over the course of an 82-game season, the Sixers, 1972-73, are the worst NBA team. Ouch. When legendary head coach Jack Ramsey announced his intention to step down as head coach and general manager, things looked grim right away. All of their key players were over the age of 30. Fred Carter, their best player, led them with 20 points, 6.0 rebounds, and 4.3 assists per game. Carter led the team in scoring each night, but he couldn't do it all by himself. Roy Rubin was signed to a 3-year, $300,000 contract by the Philadelphia 76ers. That's a lot of money for a coach with no professional basketball experience and no impressive resume. Rubin was only with the team for 51 games before being fired. Kevin Lawford took his place, but he couldn't save the situation. The team was a complete disaster. The Sixers had the worst offensive rating, 90.2, and the 4th worst defensive rating at the end of the regular season, 100.6. They were also allowing 116.2 points per game, which was the lowest in the league. Let us know in the comments down below which team you think was the worst ever, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash the notification button so that you will never miss out on another one of our videos. If you want to know about the best NBA stadiums, don't forget to check out the recommended video on your screen.